kids are back in class, and right now families are really adjusting to these new schedules and lots of changes. From kindergarten all the way through college, our educators are really trying to convey a sense of normalcy. For parents concerned about how their students are handling this new school year, we've got some expert help. Today we're joined by Dr. Cara McNulty, President of Behavioral Health and Mental Wellbeing at CVS Health, and Dr. Liz Mathias, a licensed clinical psychologist and certified school psychologist. And do remember, we want you to be part of this conversation. For the next half hour, we answer your questions, and you can also put your comments in there as well. You can submit them now under the live stream of this show on our Facebook pages. So, Dr. Liz, I want to start with you first and just talk about, these schedule changes, and all of a sudden it's like sports is back on and those extracurriculars back on, and so too is homework. It can be a little bit overwhelming.
The first 2 to 3 weeks of any school year are always jolting for all our systems, our children's systems, the parents' systems. We're reintegrating into a schedule that's pretty hectic. And we had a nice break over the summer where, for myself and my own children, we didn't do much else other than find the beach. That was really our goal, was to decompress. So yeah, this is a hectic time of the year. There's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of needing to adjust to the new school year.
So what do we do to make sure we have that routine right, Liz? Do we, make it very structured? What's the best way to handle it?
I think you need to find the routine that's going to work for you as a parent, giving your work schedule if you're working, and kind of sit down with your kids and look at the schedule and see where everyone needs to be. I'm a big fan of having a schedule that's color coded, whether it's online that everyone has access to or a whiteboard calendar, so that all our children can visually see what's coming up for them and they can begin to anticipate so that things aren't sprung on them of any age, really.
Cara, I know teenagers are starting to approach their teachers and really voice some of those mental health concerns that they have.
They sure are. I mean, we recently did a survey and looked at surveying parents and teachers. And what we found is 76% of teachers say they've been approached by a student asking about their mental health or sharing their concerns. And when you think about that, our kids are going to their teachers. And when we go in contrast, only about 46% of parents are saying that their kids are coming to them about their own mental health well-being. So there's a difference there. Our kids are asking, they're going to their teachers, and they're going less to their parents.
So I wonder, what does that tell us about then what should be happening in schools, Cara?
So it truly is about setting context and talking about our mental health as part of our physical health. That it's normal to have stress, to have anxiety or anxiousness, but we need to talk about it so our kids don't think that what they're experiencing is something different than everyone else.
Yeah, and Liz, I wonder too about initiating those conversations. So if we have the data and the data says a child might feel comfortable talking to a teacher, as a parent, instead of being insulted and saying, wait, why isn't my kid coming to me? What about, giving some of the parents who are watching those tools to say, hey, these are those conversation starters so your child feels that the parents are a safe space?
I think it's really important as parents that we open up the conversation and validate. And I think sometimes our children don't come to us because as parents, we want to fix things. We want to make it better. So we want to find some solutions, tell them they don't need to feel this way. You don't need to worry about that. You don't have to think about that. But kids are thinking about that and they are worrying about that. So opening up the conversation, but then really actively listening and validating and saying things like, that sounds really hard for you. I'm sorry that you're struggling. What can I do to help? But not coming up with these solutions or fixing, because we're all guilty of it. We want it. When our kids hurt, we hurt, and that's the bottom line. And we do want to make it better for them, but listening and validating. And I think that's sometimes why kids will go to teachers, because teachers are not emotionally connected to them. And teachers don't necessarily feel the need to make it better right away, but may offer different solutions or different ways of thinking about things that feel a little less emotionally charged.
And I know, Cara, part of the data point that you had done as part of that morning consult was taking a look at the family dynamics and the relationships really playing a part in that. 94%, of the respondents saying that was, the main factor in all of this.
Right. So the teachers really looked at family dynamics and stress of family as a high percentage of what kids were coming to them about. They also saw that kids were coming about their self-esteem, about bullying, and about social media. In contrast, what parents really think of when they think what stressing out or causing mental health disruption in their kids is more around academic pressure, is around self-esteem and fitting in, and around social dynamics. So teachers are seeing one thing, parents are seeing another. And the reality is we're all getting a piece of our kids in different settings. Right. And so how can we support them wherever they're at, in school and at home?
Liz, I wonder too about, sometimes I call it the high and low in my house. I'm not saying what I'm doing is right, but I try to say, like, what was the bright spot of your day and what was not so awesome? But I think, talking about some of those bad moments can help them maybe the next time that they're in there. So talk to me a little bit about understanding what your child's day is like, and as a parent, how to help them in the future.
I think creating that open environment and the atmosphere of you can speak what's on your mind and there's not going to be judgment or criticism or any mocking, because siblings can play a nice big role in that. But really creating that environment and saying our home is a safe spot. We support each other. We build each other up. We don't break each other down, and really living to that and encouraging those conversations, whether it's at dinner with the highs and lows, which I personally love. And continuing to have these conversations. For me, where I find the most conversations are happening with my own children is in the car, because we're not looking at each other, where they'll text me, which sounds crazy because we're upstairs and downstairs and exchanging texts about what's going on, and just offering a lot of validation and comfort. I hear you. I understand you. I'm sorry that you're struggling. What can I do to help? Just a lot of that, as opposed to do this or do that, or I'm reaching out to your teacher, or don't think that, or don't feel that. I think is so important for our kids. And that's why they do go to other people in their world, which is fine, because our children can't have solely us. We can't be in every environment. So if they're going to their teachers, that's wonderful. If they're going to their counselors, excellent. We just need to have that, I feel like, that communication between home and school. So I can share with you what I'm seeing. You can tell me what you're seeing. And then we have the big picture, and there's all the support all around.
Cara, I wonder too about our college age students, because I know you're supposed to look for changes in behavior, things like, sleep or irritability, weight gain, or, changes in how they're eating. But then for a lot of students, when you go to college, all of that is like a normal thing that happens. So how do you know where your college age student who's now not at home, how they're really doing?
Oh, it's such an important question. And I'm a mother of a freshman in college, and she's miles and miles away. And so what is the normal behavior, and what is behavior that we should really have concern about? So really understanding, thank goodness for FaceTime. So we can FaceTime and I can see, is she getting the sleep? Is she more irritable? Is she taking care of herself? Is she worrying more than she has been? Noticing and trying to step back to say, is this just part of college, or is this something different? Is this something different? And really listening to that inner parent guide, because they are going through a ton of changes. And so not overthinking, oh my gosh, it seems like she's always down or they're always down, but to really think about, they're in transition, but is this something different?
Mm-hmm. It was interesting. I took a look at some of the data. We obviously now have a new suicide hotline in this country that you can text, that you can call, 3 simple digits, 988. And I know that the number of calls in has doubled in just those 2 months, Liz. Do you think this is really going to be a game changer for so many people?
Absolutely. It's the source of support when our kids, teens, adults are not feeling like they have anywhere to turn, or it's a certain time of the day where they don't feel comfortable turning to anyone, and having someone objective and neutral to speak to, I think, is a huge support. And again, another level of support that is available. And I'm so happy that it's there, and it's a different number, and it's there for our kids and teens to reach out.
Yeah, especially because you can text. And I feel like a lot of times, having to use your words, having to say it out loud seems so scary and daunting. But, being able to text. Vanessa joining the conversation saying mental health is a thing that needs to be addressed. Most jobs offer paid time off to try to prevent burnout. No different than offering students the same thing. Their minds are still developing, and it's important to make sure they don't have too much stress, Cara.
Oh, absolutely. So I talked about this in the beginning. Taking care of our mental health is part of our physical health. It needs that same nurture, care, and feeding. And that means we need a break. Our minds need a break. They need rest. And so taking a mental health or a mental well-being day just to turn off, maybe get outside in nature, to rest, get some additional sleep, is exactly what our young adults need, what we as adults need. And changing the conversation, tying our mental health to our physical health is super important.
And it's interesting because one of the moms out there, Chris, wrote in saying, there's been times I didn't send my kids because they said they didn't feel good, but I knew it was just their way of saying that they were stressed mentally. And it's interesting to try to have that conversation with your kids, or to recognize if they're not having the conversation, what are they really telling you in their other ways of communicating? So up next, we are also going to talk about social media's impact. We're going to talk about the effect that online interactions are having on our kids and their mental health. Now, if you or someone you know is struggling or in crisis, there is help out there. We were just talking about it. That number you can call or you can text is 988. Hello to everybody on Facebook. Okay, so that was the first section. Yay! Let me just check really quick into my rundown and see if there's anything you haven't seen. Maria from the Bronx said schools need more activities along with social group classes. It's interesting too, because you look at some of the data that's out there, and the students who are seniors now were freshmen in high school, and they missed out on so many of those social interactions or joining those clubs that, because they just weren't happening during that time. And so much of those, milestone moments were missed. So I think that's a good point that Maria brings up. Can we move Maria above Lindsay? Okay. We also have another one that I'm just going to read you in just one second. It's just matriculating on my screen. New York City isn't doing enough for our kids going through mental health issues. The Department of Ed doesn't even really talk about it, and it's very frustrating. So we also have that in from Reggie. So at the very top, we're going to have Maria, and then we have Lindsay saying, how about mental health days for teachers, because we need them. So, give me just one second, sorry. Schools. Okay, so Maria, I'm going to give to you, Liz, and then Lindsay, I'm going to give you the one about teachers. So we'll do students, then teachers. Just, we're under 90 seconds back. Okay. Ended up in the wrong section, sorry. There we go. So we'll start the conversation with social media. I'm going to let both of you talk about that. Then the first question goes to Liz. Okay?
All right.
"30 seconds now." I feel like my thing is falling off. 20 seconds. Is the clock right, Karen? Welcome back to our conversation on mental health. And of course, we answer your questions and air your comments. So if you want to join the conversation, just head over to Facebook and you can put it under the live stream of this show. Dr. Liz Mathias is joining us right now. She's a licensed clinical psychologist and school psychologist, and Dr. Cara McNulty, president of Behavioral Health and Mental Wellbeing at CVS Health. So I do want to talk for a moment about social media. And, you know, we know our kids are especially vulnerable to the influence of their peers. Liz, that could be positive and negative.
Mostly, sadly, it's negative for many reasons. A lot of the pictures that are being seen have been choreographed. They're not even real, and then they're face-tuned, fine-tuned, whatever it is, whatever the terminology is. So these are people who don't even really look like that. So multiple things. We're getting perceptions of how our friendships should be and look like, and where we should be and what we should look like. In addition to this idea of physically, this is how I need to present myself, knowing that this is not how our children look. What I also find, I had picked up my daughter's phone and held it for a few seconds, the other day, and I couldn't get over the number of notifications that were coming through. It's overwhelming. Yes. There's a sensory overload, and I've been encouraging my children to turn off the notifications, and they can go and see it when they're ready. But I think we're being bombarded, in addition to the content, is just the physical stimulation that comes from the social media notifications, and which Cara, I was overwhelmed.
Yeah, it is surprising because I held one of my daughter's friends' phones and it just kept going off because it was on vibrate. And I'm like, what is happening? It was, incredible. You know, Cara, I think too, there's this, I'm going to call it a depersonalized nature of your online interactions where people can then end up being really cruel.
Absolutely, because it's not a face-to-face, in-person interaction. So you can easily hide behind that screen. Mm-hmm. And so what we know is that having conversations about bullying, having conversations about screen time and what is real and what is perception, and also encouraging our young adults and children to take a break from screens. I mean, during the pandemic, screens and interaction happened, and it was how we all stay connected. But now people are on overload, especially our kids. And so taking a break, stepping back is really important.
All right, Maria from the Bronx wrote in to say schools need more activities along with social groups classes, Liz.
I completely understand and agree. I think our kids did miss a lot of social time. And for me, I think the easiest way and the simplest way without disrupting the bigger system is to reduce the amount of homework our kids have so that they do have time for those activities and they do have time for decompression and have time for spontaneous social interaction. And to create time during the day outside of just lunch to have time for our kids to socialize. Now, that's a double-edged sword because during that time for a lot of kids, that's when there's a lot more bullying, but I think we need to figure out how to incorporate that, but to have more time for our kids to be with each other. Because if our physical and academic and mental health are all equally important, then I do think our schools need to incorporate all three.
All right, Lindsay says, how about mental health days for teachers? Because God knows we need them, Cara.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone needs, and I like to call them mental well-being days. It's where we take time to just take care of the mental health needs, and not as if one day is going to do it, but it is acknowledging that our brains need nurturing, need quiet, need rest. And you know, Dr. Liz, you said something totally spot on. We do need more interactions amongst our kids with clubs and with community, but we also have to help teach our kids what that looks like. Because have you ever been in a group of kids and they all have their phones up?
Yes.
We have to teach them, what does it look like to re-engage after 2+ years in a pandemic? And
Agreed.
what's healthy social interaction look like?
I couldn't agree with you more. That's a great point.
Yeah. Joanne says the majority of kids put tons more energy into their video games than schoolwork with no issues. This is real life, and they need to get used to it. Also, we have Nancy who wrote in to say, I gave my kids 3 mental health days a year. They're now 33, 32, and 29. They're well-adjusted, successful people, so it won't hurt them to miss a day here or there. So, Dr. Liz, I really feel like parents are saying, you know what, maybe if your kid needs a day, take a day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to make that a given in your home so that when the child wakes up, they don't have to tell you they have a sore throat or they have a this or that. Just say, I need a day. I need a day to decompress. And my own children have done it sometimes, and I'm fine with it.
Mike says you can have everything you think you need in the world, but if you don't have your mental and physical health, then you have nothing, Cara.
Oh, Mike is so spot on. And what we often don't understand is they are totally connected. Our heads and hearts are connected. And so when we exercise and eat well, it's good for our mental health. When we even take, it doesn't even have to be a full day, a 15-minute break from maybe our phones or screens or add quiet time, it's good for our mental and our physical health. We all need it.
Steve says when someone does something like shoot up a supermarket or a school because they're mentally unwell and not receiving help, it then becomes the question of how did it get this bad, or how did nobody see this person needed help? And I think that speaks to the fact that we're having this conversation now, Liz.
I agree. And I think that this has been my thing from the start. When you see a child is acting behavioral, to me, that means nothing. To me, it's what's happening underneath that. So if you see a child is acting out, melting down, getting agitated, or being fresh, that's not a time to give consequences. It's a time to understand.
All right, time to have a conversation. And we're going to continue hours, including that 2-minute takeaway next. Hello to everybody on Facebook. I want to tell Reggie, if Reggie's still watching in the Bronx, I'm going to make sure I go onto the Bronx page and respond to you. But tomorrow we are having educators on, and we're talking about this school year. So I will make sure that your question is addressed tomorrow, just because we ran out of time today. But I do want to, have the question in there, so don't think that you're forgotten. And I will make sure that I put it at the top of the list tomorrow, Reggie. So we'll talk about New York City's Department of Education then. Just for my 2 guests, since this is that 2-minute takeaway, Liz, I'm going to start with you and just say, anxiety and adjusting. And then if I start waving my hand, it means your 1 minute is up. And then Cara, the same for you. Help and resources. Cara, can you move a little to your right? When we take this full screen, you're not in the center. Yep, there we go. Perfect. Great. Freeze, don't move. Okay. So it says help and actually it just went away, but it's help and resources, reach out, ask someone if they're okay, and preventative mental health. Those are the 3 bullet points that are on there. I know you sent them in, but I just am reminding you what it was in case you're like, wait, what did I say I was doing again? That way it's right there. And for everybody watching at home, we are talking about education tomorrow. So if any of your questions or comments we didn't get to, including Reggie's, if they are pertinent to what we're talking about in school-age children, we will be talking about social emotional learning, the role of teachers, and kind of how some of that has changed and what they're dealing with when it comes to those behavioral issues and what a lot of that really actually means when those kids are acting out that way, what that means, and then how to handle that going forward, because the disruption in the classroom is one thing, but what is it saying? What's the underlying issue of, why that keeps happening? So we're 30 seconds back right now. It was lovely having both of you on.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's awesome to be here.
it's time now for your 2-minute takeaway. And Dr. Liz, I know you wanted to talk about anxiety and adjusting.
So I think a lot of what we're doing right now is adjusting to a new school year. We have to take into consideration we are coming through a pandemic, and we can't ignore that we're getting through it, and we had it. For a lot of our kids who are going back into school, the academics are a huge piece, and as parents, recognizing where our kids' academic struggles are and making sure we have the proper diagnoses and proper supports in school so that our children don't continue to struggle academically, because that absolutely contributes to poor mental health.
All right, and Dr. Cara, I know you wanted to talk about the help and resources that are out there.
Absolutely. We have to remind people that you're not alone. Your mental health and physical health are connected, and you don't have to do this without support. So there's resources available, 988, your teachers, your parents, families. We also need to treat our mental health as just like we're taking care of our mind. So a preventative approach to our mental health and our physical health is where we need to go. And last, we need to check in on each other, asking each other, how are you? How are you doing? Can I be of help? Because when we do, we open up the conversation.
Thank you both so much for your time and getting to so many questions. Now, from educational advancement to school safety, tomorrow we're talking about student success in the classroom with some education leaders from here in the Tri-State. We look forward to having that conversation live tomorrow at 9 a.m. I hope you can join us.